The year her family's empire crumbled, Sophia Vance was in her prime. And right on cue, like some twisted punchline from fate, my settlement check cleared. I rolled up on my beat-up electric scooter, slid the life-changing check in front of her, and made the most selfish pitch of my life. Have my kid. Let's just say I wanted to upgrade my blue-collar DNA. To my surprise, she used that money to claw her way back from the abyss and rebuild everything. As her power grew, the memory of our transaction started to feel less like a desperate deal and more like a ticking time bomb. So, when our daughter, Chloe, was just a few months old, I packed her up in the middle of the night and vanished. Life on the run was a constant, low-grade panic, terrified of being found by the woman who had become the undisputed queen of Riverton. I took Chloe and settled down in Havenwood, a small town far from the city's frantic pace. To make ends meet and kill time, I set up a little lemonade stand. Business was weirdly good, not because my lemonade was anything special, but because my daughter was a world-class marketing genius. With her cherubic face and a voice sweeter than honey, she was an unstoppable force. Barely 2 years old, she'd stand on a little stool and chirp, "Hey, pretty lady, want to buy some lemonade? My daddy makes it extra sweet." "Oh my gosh, you are so adorable. Can I just squish your cheeks?" "A cup for you, miss." The college kids from the nearby campus were powerless to resist. We'd sell out the cooler in an hour. "Was I good, Daddy?" Chloe scrambled down from her stool and dove into my arms, all wiggles and giggles. I laughed and swung her high into the air. "Good. You were the best. My girl's the greatest." Looking at her face, a perfect miniature of Sophia's, I couldn't suppress a surge of pride. My decision to ask her to have my kid, as shameless as it was, felt like the smartest thing I'd ever done. Chloe didn't just get her mother's looks. She inherited her brains, too. At just over 2, she could already count to 100 and do basic addition on her chubby little fingers. That kind of intelligence. I was lucky I acted when I did. Genetics are a funny thing. When I was her age, I was probably busy eating dirt. Suddenly, Chloe poked my chest with a tiny finger. "Daddy, it's moving." I glanced down. The cherry of my cigarette had singed a small hole in the front of my t-shirt. I just chuckled and pulled her into a tight, ticklish hug. We were wrestling and laughing when a voice, sharp and seething with rage, cut through the air behind us. "Sean, read." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I hadn't heard that voice in over a year, but there was no mistaking it. A cold fist of fear clenched around my heart, and I froze, unable to turn around. Chloe, however, peeked her head out from my arms. After one look, she mumbled, "Wow, she's a very pretty lady." I forced myself to take a few deep breaths, trying to calm my hammering heart. "Don't freak out. Don't freak out." After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to turn. It was her, Sophia. She wore a simple white dress, her makeup subtle and perfect, a familiar white silk ribbon tied in her hair. For a dizzying second, I was transported back to the summer I first saw her in college. That cool, ethereal beauty still had the power to stop my world. "Pretty lady, you want lemonade? We're all sold out today. Come back tomorrow." My daughter's innocent voice shattered the mirage. My focus snapped back to Sophia. The eyes I had once drowned and were now chips of ice, fixed on me. But when her gaze flickered to Chloe, an almost imperceptible warmth, something akin to love, softened them for a fraction of a second. I knew she'd find me eventually. I just never pictured it happening on a street corner that smelled of cheap sugar and lemons. My legs started to tremble as she walked toward me. Was that pure, unadulterated murder in her eyes? My hands began to shake uncontrollably. Over the past year, even as I actively avoided the news, whispers about the ruthless new CEO of the Vance Corporation had still reached me. "Daddy, why are you shaking?" Chloe asked, her innocent face tilted up in confusion. I wiped a bead of cold sweat from my forehead and managed a smile that felt more like a grimace. "It's nothing, sweetie. It's really hot out today." She mimicked me, reaching up with her small hand to clumsily wipe my brow. I kept up the pained smile, facing the frosty glare of the woman before me, my mind reeling. How vast was the Vance Corporation's reach? To be able to drag me out of a forgotten little corner like this in under 2 years. It was terrifying. The air was thick with silence. We just stared at each other as the seconds ticked by. Then I saw something that unnerved me more than her anger. Her icy eyes started to well up. Her tears were more terrifying than her rage. I couldn't take it anymore. I broke the silence first. How? How did you find me? Daddy, who is this pretty lady? Chloe mumbled, burrowing her face into my chest. I'm your mother. Sophia's voice was a whisper, softer than I'd ever heard it. Her eyes, now fixed on Chloe, were so full of love they looked like they might overflow. I was stunned. This sudden devoted mother act was a complete reversal from the cold indifference she'd shown when Chloe was born. For those first few months, she'd acted like our daughter didn't exist, pouring every ounce of her energy into her business. I was the one who stumbled through every late-night feeding and diaper change, completely alone. What was this new performance? Chloe's head popped up, her big eyes wide with excitement. Daddy, I have a mommy. The temperature around us seemed to plummet. My stomach dropped. This was bad. Sure enough, when I looked back at Sophia, the warmth in her eyes had frozen over. Her gaze was like a razor slicing into me. I pulled my daughter closer, my voice urgent. Of course you have a mommy. Where do you think you came from? Chloe scratched her little head, her expression serious. Didn't I come from a spaceship? In a story you told me, that's how the superhero got here. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Where did she even get that? Sean, what on earth have you been teaching her? Sophia's voice was cold enough to cause frostbite. I felt completely railroaded. Who knew a 2-year-old would be pondering the philosophical implications of her own origin story? Well, cousin, I told you he wasn't reliable. Look at the nonsense he's filled Chloe's head with. A new voice, dripping with sarcasm, came from behind Sophia. A striking woman stepped forward, her beauty a match for Sophia's, but her eyes held the cold, venomous glint of a viper. I narrowed my eyes and sneered. Well, I thought I heard a dog yapping. Turns out it's just you, Lindsay. I'd recognize her anywhere. Sophia's social climbing cousin. The one who vanished when the Vance family went under, only to come crawling back with a fake smile once Sophia was on top again. After Sophia and I got married, she did everything she could to drive a wedge between us, constantly putting me down. And Sophia had always seemed to let it happen. My decision to leave with Chloe had a lot to do with the constant presence of this two-faced snake. Called out, Lindsay immediately put on a wounded expression, grabbing Sophia's arm. Sophia, see, we finally find them and try to bring them home, and this is how he acts. He's not even happy to see us. Before Sophia could respond, Chloe, still perched on my shoulder, turned her head and said in her little kid voice, I don't even whine at my daddy like that. You're a big girl. You shouldn't be whining. It's embarrassing. You tell her, sweetie, she's a shameless piece of work. I burst out laughing, delighted by my daughter's perfectly timed takedown. Lindsay, probably for the first time in her life, had been publicly shamed by a toddler. Her face turned beet red. She yanked her hand away from Sophia and shot me a death glare, but she didn't dare direct her anger at the little girl in my arms. After all, Sophia Vance now ran Riverton. Lindsay's father's company depended on contracts from the Vance Corporation, and her own cushy job was a gift from her powerful cousin. And it was obvious this little girl was the new center of Sophia's universe. Enough. Both of you shut up. Sophia snapped. I stifled my laughter and watched her, expecting her to defend Lindsay like she always used to. But to my shock, Sophia raised her hand and pointed at her cousin. Her voice was absolute. You, get in the car and go back to the office. Now, Sophia. Lindsay sputtered, her face a mask of disbelief and indignation. Sophia didn't even look at her, just gave an impatient wave of her hand. Seeing that Sophia was serious, Lindsay's shoulders slumped. She trudged away toward a car parked down the street. After a few steps, she whipped her head around, her eyes locked on Sophia's back. The greed and resentment swirling in her gaze were so thick you could cut them with a knife. She thought she was being subtle, but I saw it all. Just then, Chloe looked up at me. Her big eyes, so much like her mother's, were a mix of fear, hope, and nervous anticipation. As much as I hated the idea of letting Sophia hold her, I looked at the raw, almost humble vulnerability on Sophia's face. I remembered how pale and weak she'd looked in that hospital bed after giving birth, and my heart softened. I gave Chloe a small nod. The little girl awkwardly opened her arms, her face tense, and looked at Sophia. The sight of her anxiety made my own heart ache. Sophia closed the distance in a single step, sweeping Chloe into a fierce embrace. Instantly, Sophia's shoulders began to shake, and a choked sob escaped her lips. Chloe, my baby girl. I had known her for years. I saw her go from a campus princess to a destitute girl surviving on ramen noodles after her family's downfall, and I had never, not once, seen her cry. Now, this woman who was once as hard as steel was holding her daughter for the first time, crying like a lost child. The scene was breathtakingly, painfully beautiful. The power of blood ties was truly something else. Chloe wrapped her little arms tightly around Sophia's neck and started crying too, a full-blown wail that soaked Sophia's shoulder with tears and snot. Seeing them both a mess, I tried to lighten the mood. All right, break it up you two. Shut up. Two nearly identical faces snapped toward me, both glaring. I just shrugged and backed away. Okay, you're the bosses. My mistake for talking. Truthfully, seeing her cry tied my own stomach in knots. But there was an invisible chasm between us now, a distance far greater than just a few feet. Still, watching them hold each other, a long-lost warmth crept back into my heart. A family of three. Was this what it was supposed to feel like? For their first time truly together, the vibe? It wasn't half bad. I caught myself smiling. Seeing they were going to be a while, I slipped away to a nearby convenience store to grab a couple of bottles of water. Was I worried Sophia would just take Chloe and run? Not really. I knew her pride. Besides, Chloe wouldn't abandon the dad who'd raised her for a mother she'd just met. Sure enough, when I got back, the two of them were sitting on the plastic chairs by my stand, holding hands, their heads together, whispering secrets. It was an impossibly sweet picture. The woman I loved and the child she gave me, who was a perfect blend of us both. For a fleeting moment, I let myself dream. What if life could just be like this forever? But you always have to wake up. When Sophia saw me, she stood, still clutching Chloe's hand. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice trembling slightly. Sean, I want to... Don't even think about it. My defenses shot up instantly. You think letting you have 5 minutes alone with her means you can just take her from me? I knew that hesitant look all too well. Just then, my parents, who sold vegetables at the nearby farmer's market, showed up after closing their stall. Even though they'd gotten a huge settlement a few years back, they were lifelong workers and couldn't stand being idle, even in hiding. They saw Sophia and froze, their shock quickly replaced by awkward smiles. Sophia, honey, you're here. After all, they had run away with their renegade son. Sophia nodded, her voice calm as she greeted them. Dad, Mom, I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. You can see her. That's fine. But take her away from me? Not a chance, I said, reaching out and pulling Chloe back in my arms. I could feel my daughter's reluctance. Her eyes were still fixed on Sophia. I hardened my heart and looked away, afraid a moment of weakness would lead to a lifetime of regret. My parents saw my defensive stance and immediately understood. They both took a step forward, flanking me, their bodies forming a subtle, protective barrier as they watched Sophia warily. Seeing our united front, Sophia's expression fell, and she let out a silent sigh. She knew she wasn't taking Chloe today. She didn't say anything more. She just gave Chloe one long, deep look, nodded at my parents, and said wearily, I have to get back to the office. She turned and walked away quickly, her retreat almost looking like a panicked escape. Watching her figure recede into the distance, I thought about the venom in Lindsay's eyes as she'd left. My resolve softened. For Chloe's sake, I yelled out, Hey, Sophia. She stopped but didn't turn around. Watch your back with Lindsay. She looked pretty pissed when she left, I warned. Sophia's body tensed for a second. Then, I thought I saw her shoulders shake with a tiny, silent laugh. She waved a hand over her shoulder without looking back, got into a sleek, understated luxury sedan, and disappeared around the corner. In my arms, Chloe watched the car go, her big eyes brimming with tears. Daddy, she whispered, will I see Mommy again? My parents and I exchanged heavy looks. We'll see, I said vaguely. Forgetting all about the stand, I held Chloe tight, and the three of us walked quickly back to our rented apartment, our minds heavy with worry. In the living room, Chloe was still giddy from meeting her mom, a silly grin on her face as she planned which dress to wear the next time they met. The three of us adults sat around the small table, the mood thick and silent. "We're moving," I said, breaking the silence. My parents looked at each other and nodded grimly. My dad had been disappointed when Chloe was born a girl, but over the last 2 years, he'd come to adore his clever little granddaughter, often saying he wouldn't trade her for 10 grandsons. They'd seen what happened today. With Sophia's power, taking Chloe from us would be easy. If Sophia even hinted at it, people would line up to do her dirty work just to curry favor. My mom's eyes were red-rimmed as she stroked Chloe's soft hair. "They want to take my granddaughter? Over my dead body. We're not wasting any time. Pack your things. We leave tonight. Forget the stalls. Just grab the essentials." My parents were frugal people. They'd saved the settlement money and lived off what they earned from their stall and my lemonade stand. We sprang into action. The small apartment became a whirlwind of chaos, drawers yanked open, bags being stuffed. After a while, the noise died down. My parents and I sat on the shabby sofa, staring at the few overstuffed duffel bags and the mess around us, with nothing to say. Chloe, lost in her own happy world, skipped around the room, humming a tuneless song. "Daddy, are we moving?" she finally asked, noticing the strange atmosphere. I looked out the window at the setting sun and forced a smile. "Yep, we're going to get a bigger house, so you can see your mommy more often." Her face lit up, and she started cheering and dancing around. Watching her pure joy, a wave of guilt washed over me. Should I tell her the truth? The thought died as soon as it appeared. If I told her, she'd never agree to leave. It was almost time. I scooped up a yawning Chloe with one arm and grabbed the heaviest bag with my other hand. My parents followed behind with the rest of the luggage. Taking a deep breath, I swung open the creaky wooden door of our apartment. And there she was, Sophia, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, the moonlight casting pale shadows on her cool face. She looked from the bags in my hand to the sleepy child in my arms, a smirk playing on her lips. "Well, this is a coincidence, honey. Packing for a late-night trip?" My scalp tingled under her all-knowing gaze. Is there anything more awkward than getting caught red-handed while trying to skip town? "Huh, fancy seeing you here." I chuckled weakly, trying to hide my panic. My parents, seeing Sophia, just stood there, eyes wide. The air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mom recovered first. She dropped her bag and plastered on the warmest, most welcoming smile imaginable. "Sophia, it's you. We were just on our way back." She stepped forward and tried to take Sophia's arm. Sophia didn't move. "We were just saying, a child needs her mother. Chloe's old enough now. She should be with you." My dad chimed in, grinning ear to ear. "That's right. The wife is absolutely right. A kid needs their mom." I stared at them, completely dumbfounded. What happened to our united front, to defending our granddaughter to the death? They'd switched sides in record time. Feeling the chill in Sophia's gaze, I decided to cut my losses. I swallowed my pride and nodded. "Yeah, Mom and Dad are right. A kid should be with her mother." Sophia said non-committally, then clapped her hands softly. "Well, as it happens, I came to bring you all home." The moment she finished speaking, several men in tailored black suits emerged silently from the shadows of the alley. They moved like ghosts, efficiently taking the heavy bags from our hands and loading them into a line of black sedans waiting at the curb. My parents and I exchanged a look of bitter resignation. There was no point in fighting it. This was less of an invitation and more of a summons, bringing bodyguards and a fleet of cars. She must have known we were planning to run, but the feeling of being railroaded still grated on me. I looked at Sophia, my voice laced with bitterness. "Why bother taking her back? So you can ignore her like you did when she was a baby? Leave her with a nanny while you're out playing CEO all day?" A flash of pain and guilt crossed her face before it was replaced by an almost playful look. She tilted her head. "When did I ever say I was taking the child?" Her question threw me. "You're not. Then what is all this?" Sophia looked at me like I was a particularly slow student. "I'm her mother. Don't I have the right to see my own daughter whenever I want?" She paused, her voice quiet but unyielding. "If I had wanted to take her by force, I wouldn't have come myself. And I certainly wouldn't have waited until today. So that was it. As long as she wasn't trying to take Chloe away for good, everything else was negotiable." The weight on my chest lifted, and a wave of relief washed away all my previous anger and fear. My parents watched their son get completely turned around by a few sentences and shook their heads. They bypassed me and got into the largest, most comfortable-looking sedan. As they did, they each shot me a look that clearly said, "This hopeless idiot." I was left standing there, completely baffled by the silent judgment. Sophia gently took the sleeping Chloe from my arms, handling her as if she were the most precious treasure on earth. Without another glance at me, she turned and walked toward her car. Standing there, watching her back in the silent line of sedans, I felt a sudden emptiness. So, she just wanted to be able to see her daughter. That meant my frantic escape and my grand, defensive speeches were all just me being a paranoid idiot. Just then, the rear window of Sophia's car rolled down. She poked her head out, her cool gaze finding me. "What are you waiting for? Get in." It took me a second to process. "Oh, right." On the way back to Riverton, Chloe woke up in Sophia's arms. The little girl blinked sleepily, and when she realized who was holding her, she didn't hesitate. She snuggled into the soft embrace and murmured, "Mommy." The casual affection sent a dagger through my heart. "You little traitor." Is the power of biology really that strong? After a few hours together, she'd completely forgotten about the dad who'd raised her for the past 2 years. I watched them in the rearview mirror, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Chloe, got a mom and don't need your dad anymore." Her next words were even more devastating. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" Her big, clear eyes were filled with genuine confusion. I was speechless. A full-grown man had been sitting in the car with her this whole time, and she was just now noticing? "Sweetheart, if I wasn't in the car, where would I be?" "Under it." I clutched my chest, feigning mortal injury. She giggled, thinking I was hilarious, and wiggled between us, a small concession. But it was fleeting. She immediately turned back to her mom and resumed their deep bonding session. Listening to their happy chatter, a fresh wave of regret washed over me. At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if Chloe packed her own bags and moved in with Sophia by the end of the week. The car finally pulled up to a familiar villa, the one I bought with a chunk of my parents' settlement money right after Chloe was born. We'd barely had a chance to live in it before I panicked and we fled. Chloe was still attached to Sophia like a barnacle, chirping "Mommy" over and over. I was left a trail behind them, mimicking her in a whiny, high-pitched voice, "Mommy, Mommy." They were too lost in their happy reunion to pay any attention to the background noise. My parents had already been dropped off and had immediately left to visit old friends on the west side of town. I sighed and collapsed onto the sofa. The drive was only a few hours, but the adrenaline crash left me exhausted. In Havenwood, I'd use an electric juicer for the lemonade stand. This was a different kind of tired. The truth was, we hadn't run that far. I figured the last place she'd look was right under her nose. We'd been hiding in a small town just outside Riverton city limits. If we'd fled to another major city, her network would have found us in a heartbeat. Later, after Chloe had played herself to sleep in Sophia's arms, Sophia carried her upstairs to the master bedroom. When she came back down, she found me sprawled on the sofa like a starfish. She frowned, a barely perceptible wrinkling of her brow. I was too tired to even open my eyes, so I didn't hear her approach. "What are your plans now?" her cool voice asked from above me. I cracked open one eye. It was her. I closed it again. "Live off my parents," I mumbled. I could feel her silent judgment. "If you have something to say, just say it," I muttered. "I need an assistant." "Do you want the job?" she asked, getting straight to the point. "A job? Maybe in my next life?" I shot back without thinking. Why would I go be someone's gopher when I could be a professional freeloader? Deep down, I wanted to be near her, but being her assistant, that sounded like a one-way ticket to misery. "No thanks." Her frown deepened. "What kind of example is that for your daughter?" The word "daughter" made me sit up a little. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She can be a freeloader with me. A wave of cold energy radiated from her. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Her beautiful eyes looked like they were about to shoot icicles at me. My survival instincts kicked in. "Kidding, totally kidding," I said, waving my hands frantically. "With a powerhouse role model like you, she's all set. My being a slacker just lowers the bar, takes some of the pressure off, you know?" The Arctic chill slowly receded. She seemed done with the conversation, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. Fine. If you don't want the job, you don't want it. She said she had to go back to the office and turned to leave. The front door clicked shut, followed by the sound of a car engine starting. Once the sound faded, I shot up from the sofa and tiptoed up to the master bedroom. I hesitated at the door, my mind at war with itself. I'm just going to check on Chloe. I promise I won't snoop, right? Just a quick peek. I gently pushed the door open, but my eyes immediately started scanning the room. Good. The decor was exactly as I'd left it. The furniture hadn't been moved. A thorough scan revealed no trace of another man. The knot of anxiety in my stomach finally loosened. I walked to the bed and planted a soft kiss on my sleeping daughter's forehead before slipping quietly out of the room. I had just sat back down in the living room when the doorbell started ringing insistently, accompanied by a shrill voice. Sophia, Sophia, are you home? I'd had enough. I stormed over and yanked the door open. Of course, it was Lindsay, her face a mask of fake concern. Remembering Chloe was asleep, I grabbed her arm and pulled her outside. What do you think you're doing? Get your hands off me, you hick, she spat, shaking my hand off like it was contaminated. She went to the office, I said coldly, blocking the doorway. Oh, look at you, Lindsay sneered, crossing her arms and looking me up and down. If it isn't our brother-in-law, back after 2 years on the run. Couldn't resist coming back to live off my cousin, could you? Pathetic. I decided not to hold back. You're right, I'm back to being a kept man, and I'm proud of it. It's better than some people who sell their bodies for a promotion. Isn't that right, Lindsay? I drew out her name. Her face paled. She took a step back, looking like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. What are you talking about? Mr. Huang, I said, stepping toward her, my voice low and dangerous. Need I be more specific? Lindsay, such a clean, pretty name for such a dirty little secret. You're lying, she shrieked, panicked. She pointed a trembling finger at me, then turned and stumbled away on her high heels, a picture of guilty retreat. Watching her flee, my mood lifted considerably. I turned to close the door and walked straight into a pair of deep, knowing eyes. Sophia was standing right behind me, silent as a shadow. Whoa, what are you? Why are you back? I yelped, clutching my chest as my heart tried to beat its way out. What? I can't come back to my own house, she asked, one eyebrow raised, her gaze analytical. No, that's not it, I stammered. It's just, you just left for work. It's weird that you're back so soon. Then I saw the thick manila envelope in her hand. She come back for file. Idiot, I mentally slapped myself. Sophia didn't say anything else. She walked past me, got in her car, and as she drove away, she rolled down the window. You should read more, she said, her tone completely serious. There's this author, Brad Sterling. He's got some interesting ideas. You should check him out. Before I could respond, she hit the gas and was gone. I stood in the doorway, totally confused. Brad Sterling. Who the hell was that? I was a literature major, for crying out loud. She wanted me to read some obscure writer. It was ridiculous. But I still pulled out my phone and Googled the name. I clicked on the author's page and saw the title of his most famous book, The Glorious Moron. I was speechless. She was calling me an idiot. I felt like a kid in middle school who gets a note that says, turn this over for a secret, only to find the words, you're a loser, written on the back. I had a laugh. I yelled at the empty street, Sophia Vance, you win this round. For the next month, Sophia was true to her word. She came to see Chloe constantly, never once suggesting she'd take her away. In fact, she spent most of her nights at the villa. But we kept to our separate rooms, a silent truce between us. Watching Chloe cuddle up with her, hearing their laughter fill the once-empty house, the strange ache in my chest didn't go away. It just grew, like a vine wrapping itself around my heart. My parents stayed for a few days before complaining about the city noise and heading back to their quiet life in the country. Most days, it was just me and a nanny in the huge house. One afternoon, I left Chloe with the nanny and wandered outside. The sun was bright, the streets were crowded, but I felt like a ghost, walking without any destination. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of Smitty's barbecue pit, the smoky, greasy joint where my buddy Frank and I used to hang out. The familiar smell hit me, and a wave of nostalgia washed over me. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. Yo, his loud voice crackled through the speaker. Barbecue. The usual spot, I said. Holy crap. Sean. I thought you were dead. Frank yelled. Dude, just for this call, I'm drinking you under the table tonight. Be right there. He hung up before I could say another word. I smirked and went inside, ordering a mountain of ribs and a couple of buckets of beer. By the time he arrived, a whirlwind of energy, as always, there were already a few empty bottles on the table. After a few ice-cold beers, the knot in my stomach started to loosen. The alcohol went to my head, and my mouth started running. Frank, tell me, am I an idiot? I mumbled, poking at a piece of brisket. She's back, we're living under the same roof, but my head is all messed up. Messed up about what? Sophia Vance is a billionaire bombshell. Most guys would kill to be in your shoes. What's not to be happy about? Frank slurred, his face already flushed. Happy. I took a long pull from my bottle, but the cold beer couldn't cool the fire in my gut. Do you have any idea what it was like when Chloe was born? Her own mother. She barely looked at her. She was out all day, every day, like she didn't have a kid at all. Now she's playing Mother of the Year. I was the one hiding out with Chloe for 2 years while she was becoming CEO of the freaking year. I let it all out, the resentment I'd been carrying for so long. It felt like a massive weight was finally shifting inside me. You don't know jack squat. Frank suddenly slammed his hand on the table, making the bottles rattle. Do you know what Sophia was like after you took off with Chloe? She was a wreck. I saw it myself, man. She was losing her mind. You think she wanted your damn settlement money. The son of that tech billionaire, what's his name, offered her $100 million to marry his kid, and she didn't even blink. You think your little nest egg even registers on her radar? $100 million. I froze, the alcohol buzz vanishing. My head was spinning. Before I could even process what he'd said, a powerful wave of dizziness hit me. The room started to tilt, Frank's face blurring in front of me. I tried to grab the edge of the table, but my arm felt like a wet noodle. The last thing I heard was Frank yelling my name before everything went black. When I woke up, my head was splitting open. I forced my eyes open and saw a stunningly beautiful face just inches from mine. And was that a faint smile on her lips? I had to be dreaming. Sophia never smiled at me. I reached out, my fingertips brushing against her cool, smooth cheek. It felt real. This wasn't a dream. I bolted upright, my heart hammering, and immediately checked my clothes. They were all on. Thank God. I let out a breath of relief. What's wrong? Afraid I'd take advantage of you. Sophia's voice was laced with amusement, the hint of a smile growing wider. I collected myself and shot back. Not at all. Just worried I might have slept through the good parts. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. My stupid, drunken mouth. A blush spread across her cheeks. She looked away, muttering, "You and your filthy mind." Then, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, she produced a steaming bowl of chicken soup. The rich aroma filled my nostrils. I looked at the soup, and a small, warm part of my heart started to melt. "You made this?" I asked cautiously. "In your dreams," she snapped, turning her head, though the blush on her ears gave her away. "Maria, the nanny, made it for you. Drink it or don't. I don't care." She started to get up. "Wait." I snatched the bowl from her. Can't let Maria's hard work go to waste. I took a spoonful, blew on it, and took a sip. It was perfect, rich, savory, and soothing. But I puckered my lips and frowned. Ugh, way too salty. And is that a hint of bitterness? Just as I'd hoped, she got defensive. She grabbed the bowl back. That's ridiculous. Maria barely put any salt in it at all. To prove her point, she took a sip herself. The world stopped. "Sean." She realized she'd been played. Her face turned a shade of crimson I'd never seen before. She shot me a look that could kill, then turned to leave with the soup bowl. Watching her storm off, I felt the ice that had been building up around my heart for years finally begin to crack. She paused at the doorway, her back still to me. Her voice was calm again, but it held a new weight, a seriousness that made me listen. "Tomorrow," she said, "you'll understand everything." Then she was gone. I sat there, holding the warm bowl of soup, my mind in turmoil. Tomorrow. Understand what? Could what Frank said actually be true? The next morning, the financial world was rocked by a bombshell. Vance Corp CEO exposes uncle in massive fraud scheme. Lynn family under federal investigation. At the press conference, Sophia stood before a wall of cameras, dressed in a sharp black power suit. Her face was grim, her voice steady, as she laid out the evidence against her uncle and her cousin. Lindsay. She detailed everything. Lindsay embezzling millions, her uncle's shell companies engaging in tax evasion, accounting fraud, commercial bribery. The list went on, each claim backed by irrefutable proof. Her voice, amplified by the microphones, was chillingly calm, as if she were reading a weather report and not systematically destroying her own family. The press conference went viral. I watched the screen, seeing the powerful, commanding woman in the spotlight, and my heart was a tangled mess of emotions. The cold, ruthless CEO on TV was a world away from the vulnerable woman I sometimes saw, but for the first time, I think I truly understood the battlefield she lived on. When the conference ended, I leaned back on the sofa, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, my thoughts a chaotic jumble. Suddenly, a familiar, delicate scent drifted toward me. Before I could turn, a pair of cool arms wrapped around my neck from behind. Sophia rested her chin on my shoulder, her warm breath tickling my ear. "Honey." Her voice was thick with emotion, nothing like the corporate queen from the press conference. "Do you know how badly I wanted to hold Chloe when she was born?" My heart clenched. "I was too scared," she whispered, her arms tightening around me, her body trembling. "My Uncle Lindsay," they were like vultures, just waiting for me to show a single weakness. If they knew how much I loved her, they would have used her to control me, just like they did when they destroyed my father's company. She took a shaky breath, her voice raw with pain. I had to pretend I didn't care. It was the only way to fool them, to buy myself time to plan, to build my strength. I finally had enough power to protect you both. I thought we could finally be a family. And then you heartless bastard. You took my daughter and disappeared." A hot tear splashed onto my shirt, followed by another. 2 years of pent-up fear, grief, and desperation came pouring out in a flood of silent, racking sobs. "Sean, do you have any idea what these last 2 years have been like? I looked for you everywhere. I was going crazy. I'm so glad. So glad you didn't go too far, because if I had really lost you both, I don't know what I would have done." She couldn't speak anymore, just clung to me like a drowning person finally reaching a piece of driftwood in a storm. Her words were the key that finally unlocked the door in my mind, the one that had been sealed shut with suspicion and resentment. Her distance after the birth, her frantic search for us, her calculated moves. It all clicked into place. It wasn't coldness, it was armor. Her comeback wasn't just a business victory. It was a brutal, high-stakes war she had been fighting all alone. The thorn that had been lodged in my heart for years was finally gone, washed away by her tears, leaving only a dull ache of regret and an overwhelming surge of love and protection. When her sobs finally quieted, I thought of what Frank had said, and a playful idea sparked. I turned in her embrace, gently cupped her tear-stained face in my hands, and wiped away the moisture with my thumbs. "So," I began, my tone light, "Frank told me a crazy story last night. Said some tech billionaire offered you $100 million to marry his son, and you didn't even give him the time of day. Is that true? Come on, Ms. Vance. You didn't fall for a poor schmuck like me way back then, did you?" Her face, still blotchy from crying, flushed a brilliant red. Her eyes darted away from mine like a startled animal. Who? Who fell for you? Don't be ridiculous, you. You're always saying such stupid things." Seeing her so flustered, trying so hard to be tough when she was at her most vulnerable, made my heart feel like it was going to burst. My playful teasing melted away into pure, unadulterated desire. "Is that so?" I murmured, my thumb tracing the line of her jaw, tilting her face back up to meet my gaze. Her beautiful eyes were still shimmering with unshed tears, my own reflection captured perfectly in them. "Let's just see how tough you really are." Before she could form another protest, I closed the distance and silenced her with a kiss. The spark of contact ignited a wildfire. 2 years of longing, of misunderstanding, of lonely nights. It all erupted in that single moment. Separate rooms, unspoken grievances, all of it was incinerated in the heat between us. It was a reunion, a homecoming, a force of nature. The dam of restrained emotion broke, and there was no stopping the flood. All the explanations, the pain, the fear, the joy. We said it all without words, in the tangle of limbs and the desperate meeting of lips. From the living room to the bedroom, it was a storm, A hurricane of passion that didn't subside until the dark sky outside began to pale with the first light of dawn. All that was left was the quiet peace of two exhausted people, finally asleep in each other's arms. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the tangled sheets. I opened my eyes and looked at the woman sleeping in my arms. With all her armor stripped away, the perpetual iciness in her features had vanished. She looked peaceful, innocent, like a girl who had never known hardship. Her long lashes cast soft shadows on her cheeks, and the corners of her lips were turned up in a slight, contented smile. I could hear the faint sounds of Chloe and the nanny talking downstairs, the distant clatter from the kitchen. The normal, comforting sounds of a home finally, truly filled the once cold house. I tightened my arm, pulling her closer, feeling the steady beat of her heart against my chest. I leaned down and placed the softest of kisses on her forehead. The awkward first meeting, the crazy proposal, the frantic escape, the terrifying reunion. All the chaotic chapters of our story had finally settled, becoming a solid, comforting weight in my soul. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew, this time, neither of us was ever letting go. "Daddy, Mommy, what you guys doing?" A small, curious voice piped up from the doorway. Sophia yelped and pulled the covers up to her chin. I, on the other hand, was unfazed. I flexed, making a half-hearted attempt at showing off an 8-pack. "Oh, your mom and I were just discussing the science of building abdominal muscles. Want me to teach you?" "You," Chloe squealed, scrunching up her nose. "I don't want a lumpy tummy like you." And with that, she turned and scampered back downstairs.